Thank you guys very much. How are you guys doing today? All good? Great. Lunch good? Great. Well, I want to talk to you about PowerPoint today. This is something that we all use, projection and PowerPoint. I'm very passionate about a topic that those of us in a lot of the church media world refer to as visual worship. And visual worship, which clicker is this, by the way? Visual worship is about using technology and understanding how it works. Is it the top one? The bottom one? The next one? Oh, it's the next button. How about that? 12 years in running PowerPoints, and I'm still learning how to use the next button. It's crazy. So what I want to do is kind of walk you through a very brief and actually very obvious history over the course of the past, couple of decades of how our eyes are engaged in worship. So if you look here, I'll kind of call this the trail of visual worship. We start with hymnals, or singing hymns. Then you see songs that progress into choruses, and now we have what we like to call the modern worship movement, and all these different anthems, and passion, and Jesus culture, and Hillsong, and all these churches, all these songs that we're starting to sing in our churches. You kind of see historically the progression of how we've been singing songs. And there's a parallel in how we've been presenting those lyrics, from hymnals to using PowerPoint, and then to presentation software, utilizing motion backgrounds and iMag, live video, and all sorts of craziness. For me, I've been on this journey in the past 12 years, and I feel like I've kind of transitioned from being a PowerPoint guy, who are just clicking the next button, to being a visual worship leader, to someone who is using art and imagery to lead worship. Just as the songs serve as a soundtrack for our worship, I believe the visuals that we can present and the atmosphere that we can create in a worship space help us lead visual worship. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. Here's just a few examples of some things that I've done. I love to take moments where there's different prayers or text or poems or whatever it is that show up maybe during the instrumental break while the worship leader is singing, ways to engage the audience and the congregation, almost like I'm playing a visual solo, if that makes any sense, where there's just different prayers where it's not just the lyrics on the screen, but different things that can engage us in a different way. When people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them that it's kind of like PowerPoint on steroids. For the last 12 years, I've made a career out of running the slides. And during this time, I've evolved from being what I like to call a spacebar monkey into a visual worship leader, a curator of images who arranges beauty in time and space in order to create an environment and tell a story. Projection is my paintbrush, and the screen is my canvas. In the last decade, production technology has progressed like we've never imagined, and it's found a home in many of our churches. Despite the fact that most art and imagery were excommunicated because of the Protestant Reformation, since the modern worship movement, evangelicals have become fascinated, if not a little obsessed, with the use of technology in worship, particularly in the area of projection. And I'd like to thank those Protestant reformers for throwing out all that art and imagery, because now I have a really fun job. Evangelical churches have been using projection and visual media for a myriad of reasons, mainly to make the worship service more exciting and attractive, and my favorite word, relevant. And these words always make me twitch a little. Our big productions are now serving as visual amplifiers. It's been fun to be a part of, but after a dozen years, my soul has become weary. My eyes are tired. The noise has just become too much. And while I'm all about raucous celebration, I believe we have lost the art of reverent reflection. We have very little sense of what I like to call sacred space. Very rarely do I find a worship environment that slows you down and stirs up a prophetic imagination. The art of sacred space isn't just about creating a nice aesthetic, although that's always nice, like all those wood pallets and Edison bulbs that we see everywhere. A lot of churches are starting to get into that now. And that's fun. I really like that. But to me, it's more about than just creating a nice aesthetic. It's also about telling a story, a visual liturgy, if you will. We have a verbal liturgy for our ears and our voices, but what about a visual liturgy for our eyes? I believe our bodies are sacramental. And if this is true, then how are we forming ourselves through what we see? And if we are feeding the eyes of our community, shouldn't we serve them more than eye candy as the main course? Unfortunately, modern worship has borrowed the liturgy of the rock concert, which forms worshipers into fans and critics. When the worship leader and the object of our worship occupy the same visual space, the worshiper is easily confused, consciously or subconsciously, about who the sinner truly is. A friend of mine, Glenn Packiam, said that. By default, the posture of entertainment encourages consumerism instead of consecration. In a sense, we never got away from the use of icons and images. We just substituted the art for the celebrity. As Lisa Gungor wrote in her song, Shiny Buildings, art and architecture purposed all to point to something else, slowly turning into stages where we're pointing to ourselves. We've traded the meal for the microphone. We've lost the sacrament and gained the stage. No wonder our houses of worship feel more like a showroom instead of a sanctuary. The environment you meet in will, over time, shape the way you worship. Or as Frank Lloyd Wright said, we shape our environment, and then our environment shapes us. We desperately need a stronger, healthier visual liturgy. From the media we use, to the stage design, to the lighting, to the entire posture of the room. We need to embrace a Christ-centered visual language of beauty and space. And Glenn Packiam says, he put it this way, our visuals need to line up with our verbals. And one just example of that, and it's easy to throw stones, and it's kind of an unpopular message. And I'm not talking about style here. I think there's a lot of different styles that we can use in how we do our productions and how we sing our songs and the way we use our media. But I'm talking about form, and I'm talking about posture. And I really do believe that when we're creating an atmosphere that points to us, when we're singing all about God, or we're singing like, I'm not against iMag or live cameras or anything like that, but there's just a disconnect for me when we sing how great God is, but all we see visually is how great the worship leader looks on the screen. I think that there are some, not that it's wrong to use iMag, I just think that there are better ways that we could use that. You know, we've seen this practiced historically through the building of cathedrals, but hardly anyone is doing that these days, especially not in our evangelical world. But I want to paraphrase Ian Cron from his book, Chasing Francis. Medievals built huge ornate churches so that people walking into them would feel like they've left one world and entered another reality, the kingdom of God. Think of what happens to your senses when you walk in those doors. Stained glass windows, frescoes and paintings, dimmed lights, flickering candles, the smell of incense, vaults and arches pulling your spirit upward, and angels soaring on the ceilings. God can sneak up on you through the architecture. Augustine said the human mind was particularly delighted when truth was presented to it indirectly, like in symbols in sacred space. Unfortunately, most churches today are designed without any sense of the iconic, because we moderns like straightforward, unambiguous communication. We want worship centers where hominess is more important than holiness. It seems that most church architecture today focuses on the utilitarian more than anything else. We want our architects to load us up with all the technological goodies you'd find in a world-class performing arts center. But what we've ended up asking for is lights, camera, action, rather than Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Everything speaks. Not just what's coming through this microphone or social media, or anything that we say verbally or with text. I truly believe that the sacred space and the environment for worship that we're creating that lighting and church media and production have such an incredibly influential role to play. They're creating environments that shape more than what we know. And they're creating a posture for worship. And when you look in the New Testament, worship is all about posture. Everything speaks, everything that our eyes see. Now, I don't think that every church needs to go build some big ornate cathedral and big buildings. But how can we reclaim a sense of sacred space where we currently gather? And how can we use technology and creativity in subtle yet immersive ways that bring back a sense of awe and wonder, like those cathedrals of old? A building, together with its furnishings and arrangement of space, is a physical expression of a particular congregation's attitude towards worship. Robert Weber said that. And at my church we have a saying, creativity must be the subtle amplification of our worship. Subtlety is key. Immersive environments should slow you down and stir up your imagination, not create more noise. Now, there's nothing wrong with production technology. Obviously, I made a job out of it, and I love using it. I think it's a conversation about how we're using that and why we're using it. What I've seen in the past few years, and I've seen a lot, it's taken its toll. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and I've seen the ugly. The popular way production is used these days is not the healthiest. We need to recalibrate the layout of our worship services from the stage back to the table. This one parishioner's feedback is what I'm talking about. This is my aim when leading and creating worship experiences. The service felt sacred. It drew me in. It didn't feel like a rock concert or a pep rally. It made me quiet my soul and then allowed me to engage the presence of God. For the last 12 years, I've been trying to experiment with ways to do this with media and projection. And one of the methods I've discovered is what we in the church media world like to call environmental projection. And if you can go ahead and start that music, I want to create a little atmosphere for the last couple of minutes here. Let me show you some examples of what I'm talking about. And again, this is not for everyone. This is just a different way of using church media and projection. Oh, and it went away. Oh. Thank you so much. This is a church in Dallas, Irving Bible Church. My friend Cameron Ware has a website called visualworshiper.com. It's taken 3 projectors and treats it more like lighting. He was able to transform the entire space. Sometimes when we're singing that chorus, singing Jesus' name over and over and over again, at some point you just don't need the lyrics on the screen. Let's just wrap the room in the names of God and declare His glory and who He is. This is a small Sunday school room. It's not just for big churches, but a small Sunday school room designed for about 12 people on a Monday night to come and pray and reflect and commune. And with 3 standard little dinky projectors that are meant for a classroom, can transform the entire space. I love walking into churches like this because I love the simplicity, but I also see a blank canvas. So here's a process of mapping the projectors using a focus pattern so that I can align the projectors to the seams in the architecture, so that it's not just splashing up a projector on a wall, it's actually fitting the projection to the currently existing architecture. And just painting it with stained glass or the names of God or stars and cosmos or whatever it be. And this is in a small church, not a small church, a medium-sized church down in Franklin, Tennessee. They don't have a lot of blank walls. They're more of in a warehouse situation, but they have these acoustic panels on the back of their stage. So I saw it, and I said, man, those look kind of like windows to me. So using ProPresenter, which a lot of churches use, and a feature called masking, are able to use 3 projectors and kind of paint whatever it is that we want to across those acoustic tiles. Here's the Stations of the Cross, which we slowly revealed over the course of an entire worship set. Just another subtle way to tell the story of God and to take people on the journey of the cross during worship. Now, if you're a technical person like me, you're probably wondering, how in the world is he doing that? What are you using? How much does that cost? There's so much to get into, but I will tell you this, it is actually quite simple. It does not require a lot of expensive technology. The projectors that I use, a lot of situations, I use 3 projectors, and each one of those projectors costs $1,500, about, give or take. I use 1 laptop, ProPresenter, which a lot of churches use, and a little device called a triple head to go, which costs about $300 or $400, and that allows me to span the content across 3 projectors. So it's actually, relatively speaking, it's quite affordable. And if you want to learn more about multi-screen media and how to do environmental projection, go to thewideguide.com. My friend Luke McElroy, who's running production here at the conference, wrote this incredible ebook, and it walks you through a lot of multi-screen media and environmental projection. And if you need more resources and ideas, and to continue the conversation, you can check out my website there, shameless plug, illuminate.us. And if you want to start this conversation with your volunteers or your pastors or your team back home in your community, then I wrote an ebook that you can get for free if you just sign up for the newsletter. It's called The Guidebook for Visual Worship. Twitter and all that weird stuff, so I'll put that up later. Look, this is kind of like a heavy message, I know, but I really am passionate and excited and hopeful about this, and I'm constantly asking the inconvenient and the hard questions. What can we do to enhance what we're doing with our worship services, and how we're using production technology and media to do that? Though I strongly believe that we as the church have a lot to wrestle with still, and we're still trying to figure it out, I'm very encouraged. And like the illuminators of the gospel books and the stained glass artists of old, I see a generation of production artists and prophets and priests that's rising up to recover this ancient practice of sacred space and to bring back out what I like to call a visual theology for our eyes, to illuminate the blank and barren worship centers, to recalibrate the big productions so that they shine a light on the beauty of the Word and the sacraments. And by doing so in a way that keeps Christ, not our creativity, at the center of our worship. Thank you.